Welcome to the Leadmore podcast. The Leadmore podcast is the show where we sit down with leaders of today to help inspire and create more leaders for tomorrow. Because I believe the world needs more leaders. And as today's episode clearly shows us, leaders don't always come in the same places or locations or schools and backgrounds and salaries and job titles as we maybe think they do. And that's why I'm so excited after today's conversation for episode 47 with Brigit Blote. Brigit is the CEO of Fomeno. She is a 21-year-old college junior, Division I college athlete. She's in the symphony and she's building a company. And in this episode, she tells us the origin story, which is only about a year long, of their company, Fomeno, and the business prize competition that they competed in the entire globe, how they were pitching on the eve of COVID. It's a fascinating story and such a refreshing look at such a young, talented leader. I think you're really going to like this episode with Brigit. So here we are, episode 47 with Brigit Blote. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Leadmore podcast. I'm here with an incredible young leader, Brigit Blote. How are you today, Brigit?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming to Lemonly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place you have here. I'm really excited to be here.
Cool. Well, you're the CEO and co-founder of Fomeno, correct? And tell the listeners what that is.
Correct. So Fomeno is an app that offers the simplest online thrifting experience yet.
Okay.
Yep. So you just type in a clothing item you're looking for, and Fomeno will find it, thrift it.
So when you say you find it, like where I could buy it from?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I can list it? Or when you say thrift it, I'm buying it?
Yes.
Okay.
So thrifting is just like the purchasing of secondhand clothing. So we just consolidate all of this data from hundreds of online thrift shops so that shoppers can find it in one streamlined location.
Okay. So that makes a ton of sense in practice.
Right.
How does my local Salvation Army or Goodwill actually, do they have that type of data?
So most, especially with COVID-19, a lot of thrift shops that are mostly brick and mortar have pivoted to be online because they wanted their inventory to be more accessible due to the pandemic. But most thrift shops in today's era are just online. They put their inventory both online, and if they have a brick and mortar shop, then they do it in the shop too. They have their clothing inventory there. But right now we're mostly just partnering with shops that already have their data online.
Yeah. So your pitch is we're bringing you customers.
Right.
And then you guys take a cut of that purchase?
Yep. Like a 10% per transaction fee.
Okay, cool. And so how many, do you guys measure more on items or number of thrift shops, or how many people are on the platform today?
So we have about 25 thrift shops that are currently partnering with us. Yep. Ranging from really small, independently owned to maybe having maybe 5 to 10 employees.
Okay.
There's one that we're working with in furthering our partnerships. They're a Y Combinator startup. They're called Thrift.
Yeah.
They're out of around Berkeley. They're two students from Berkeley who just graduated. So
cool. So
kind of all over the ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've also heard of a company called The Real Real.
Yes.
And they are kind of in this space, right?
Yes, they are in the space. So they would be a potential partner.
Okay, got it. Interesting. Okay, so I think what certainly makes this interesting is the idea is great, but also you're still in college and you started this company a year ago. Was it pandemic induced, or just an idea you already had?
So the idea originally, I guess I'm a junior in college right now. I'm graduating at the end of the summer.
Oh, congrats.
To do Fomeno full time.
So you don't even have to drop out. You still get to get your degree.
Right, that was the goal.
Good work.
I wanted to finish what I started.
I'm sure your parents are happy.
Yes, they are. But yeah, so the idea originated, I was going into my sophomore year of college. I was studying abroad in Costa Rica for a sustainability trip.
Cool. And
we essentially they told us when we were going to the program that we were living in this mountain called Monteverde.
Yeah.
And it's such a steep mountain range that a bus could not get us up to where we were staying with these locals. Wow. So they told us
when you're hike.
Right, exactly. A very strenuous hike. So they told us when we were packing to pack very light, because everything that we were going to wear for a month, we had to be able to carry on our backs up to this mountain.
Yeah.
So one of my friends there had this t-shirt and it had forget-me-not flowers on it, and I loved this shirt. So she wore it over and over again because we had to wear everything that we could carry on our backs. And I would tell her every time she wore it, I love that t-shirt. I love that t-shirt. She said, Brigit, you should just buy it. And so we talked about where she bought it from. The company wasn't a very ethical company. We just we were on the sustainability trip. We really just both talked about this. And she said, okay, well, I challenge you when you get back to the US, you obviously love this shirt. Why don't you try and thrift it? I said, okay, I'll try it.
Yeah.
So I get back to the US and I know I'm probably not going to find it in a regular thrift store. That's just a bit too tasking.
Yep.
So I jump online and I start typing in, okay, forget-me-not t-shirt.
Yeah, and how do you describe it? Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's a challenge. But I start finding it on all of these different platforms. So like ThredUp, Poshmark, all these independent small thrift shops. It's there.
Yeah.
It's in different sizes, different qualities, different prices, different shipping, all these different things. But as I'm sitting there sifting through these options, there's hundreds and hundreds of this t-shirt that's available.
Yeah.
In my size, ready for me to buy.
Yeah.
Cheaper than it is even in store.
Yeah.
And so as I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay, if thrifting is the most sustainable way to shop, if we're trying to partake in this circular economy of reutilizing clothes, why isn't this easy? Like, why do I have to sit here for hours on end trying to find the best option? Why don't we just create a way to do it better?
Yeah.
Like, why don't we make this easy?
Yeah.
So that's how the idea of Fomeno started. We're here to just make thrifting easier, simpler, more enjoyable. So you just type in the clothing item you want, and we find it for you within just a snap.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, two thoughts. One, you're going to be a good entrepreneur because you're a good storyteller. And I think that's a huge part of it, especially as your role as CEO. But talk to me about what does easier mean? So like clearly it wasn't hard to find it because there was several options, but is easier meaning like closer or cheaper, or like what's the way that how do you filter through all those choices?
Right. So when you sign up for the app, you put in your sizes, your location, and what we'll do, it might take a few rounds to get to the final product. But originally the basics is we find it in your size, we find the best quality, we find the cheapest option with probably the best shipping price.
Yep.
So we're just trying to find that best option for you.
And then like in eBay, are they all just listed kind of by best to worst? Or?
Right.
Okay.
And then we're also, so like Poshmark and ThredUp are kind of like the super house, like powerhouses of online thrifting. But there are so many smaller, like independently run thrift shops that just don't have the ability to market themselves like the others do. So we take them and throw them into the mix and say, hey, you should shop from them too.
Yep, cool.
So yeah.
Awesome. And so you have a pretty good origin story there, but what as a, 20-year-old or whatever you were said, I should be the one to solve this problem?
Yeah, so that's funny. The idea just came to mind. I kind of laughed at it. But I called my honors advisor from USD the next morning, and I just said, hey, so I thought of this crazy idea. She wanted to hear about how Costa Rica was or anything like that. And like you said, leaders are people who just believe in others, at the end of the day. That's what we do. Yep. And so she just blatantly told me, like, wow, that's a great idea. You should go for it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of laughed at her. I thought, no way. I don't know anything about tech. This is obviously a tech thing. There's no way I could do this. And then, I don't know, she's just the one who said, no, like, I think this is awesome. And she's the first person I told. And so, I don't know, that validation right from the get-go is just enough to at least spark the idea to maybe look into it one step further.
Yep.
So the next person I called on the phone was my friend Ashlyn Atwood. And she is a co-founder of Fomeno. Yeah. And Ashlyn is, her degree is in health science, but she's just very gifted in design. She's able to see things, visualize, articulate it on paper. And so I was like, okay, if we're designing an app, I was still kind of joking around about it at this time. Yeah. It's like,
hypothetically.
I was like, I need someone who can actually do it because that's not my strength at all. I cannot design, visualize, articulate. No, that's not me. So, I told her about it, and she also thought, wow, this is so cool. And Ashlyn and I would love to go thrifting together freshman year of college when we met. And so she's like, yeah, I could probably put something together. So she gets online, finds these, wireframe applications for free, just starts making something up. And that's just kind of how it started until the Hult Prize competition came around. And Ashlyn and I had competed in it kind of on a whim the year prior.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we knew what it was.
And for listeners, just explain what that is. I'm
Yes.
kind of vaguely aware, but
Yes. So the Hult Prize is a global competition. It takes place in 121 countries across the world.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. And each year they roll out with a new prompt. So it always has to do with sustainability, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So they're trying to encourage young students, college students.
Just in the university college system?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Exactly. So they're just trying to encourage college students to come up with innovative enterprises that solve some sort of social issue.
Yep.
So
It's a giant Shark Tank.
exactly. Yep. Precisely. With a $1 million grand prize.
Wow.
So, so Ashlyn and I saw the prompt. It was very simple. Usually, the year prior, it was to employ 10,000 youth, or,
Okay.
this year it has to do with agriculture.
Okay.
But our year, it just was very cut and dry, just to create a sustainable enterprise.
Oh,
And so Ashlyn and I looked at each other and we thought,
convenient.
why not try it out,
Yeah.
So with that, you need 3 to 4 team members, and both of us at the same time knew of this girl named Peyton Riz. She's on the triathlon team. She had done a lot of motivational speaking events. Everybody knows her for like her personality, her energy. She's not afraid to talk to anyone. She's very mission driven. And we both kind of looked at each other at the same time. We're like, what about Peyton? I wonder if she would be willing to do this. And at that time, we were sitting in the library and we see Peyton just walking right next. We were like, it's a sign. So it kind of all just happened really quickly. But we asked Peyton, we said, hey, we're thinking about throwing together this team for the Hult Prize competition. Would you want to be a part of it? We already have an idea. And she said, yes.
So you guys are entrepreneurs that actually go to the library, huh?
I guess so.
So she says yes, now you have a team of 3.
Correct.
And then what has to happen after that?
So basically, we put together these pitches, and there are different rounds. So we start off with the university round. You pitch. It's a 4-minute pitch, and then a couple minutes of questioning, and then all the teams do that, and then at the end, the judges pick the winner.
So you win at like the University of South
Correct.
Dakota level.
Yes.
And then you go
And
state
then-
or region? Or?
Yes. So if your university is large enough, you can immediately qualify for the regional round.
Okay.
I think there are 30 regions across the globe. And so we won the USD round, so we immediately qualified for the United States regional.
Okay.
So that was in Boston.
Okay.
And that's where the competition really increases. So we were competing against like Harvard, Duke, Vanderbilt, MIT, like these amazing institutions.
Yeah.
And even at that time, we were just thinking, oh, this is a fun idea. We love what we're doing,
At this point, you just have like a mock-up of the app.
We literally have Ashlyn's like wireframes that she designed,
Which actually I think for anyone listening is is the right approach, right? Like nowadays, because of these awesome tools and technology at a very, very low cost, we can mock up, like essentially, prototype before you build, before you go hire a developer and invest a lot of money. You already were validating your idea.
Right. And I mean, it's so funny with technology today. Like we can put out these wireframes that make it look like this app already exists, but really it doesn't.
Yep.
So anyway, we went to Boston, and while we're in Boston, it's March 13th of 2020.
Oh.
Like right as the world is closing.
Yeah.
So we flew out there, and all of a sudden, while we're there, it's when everything's going down. We were there for 3 days, and I think it was the craziest world-changing 3 days of my life.
Did you get to present or no?
It went virtual.
Yeah.
So, which I think was an advantage to our team. It helped us. I think we weren't 100% prepared to be pitching in person, but it went virtual. Huge advantage for us.
Sure.
But yeah, so we pitched, and that night, so they told us at 4 p.m. we would know who the final 6 are. So you have about like 60 to 100 universities that are in this United States regional, and they narrow it down to final 6.
Mm-hmm.
And the final 6 get interviewed, and they really look into it. Like, is that your pitch everything that it said it was?
Sure.
Because they have to narrow it down to one team who will win.
Yep.
And they said by 4 o'clock, you will know if you made the final 6. So 4 o'clock rolls around. We're sitting there afraid about COVID. Are we going to get home? We're sitting there thinking, I wonder if we'll get it. 4 o'clock comes, we hear nothing. Oh, no. So we're kind of like, we're in Boston. I guess this was a really fun trip, trying to.
Can't do anything now.
Right, can't do anything now. But it's about 9:30. We're all laying in bed, ready to go to sleep. We have to get up early the next morning to fly home. And I get a text on WhatsApp from this woman named Nellie, who's the head of the Hult Prize outreach.
Okay.
She just says, "Congratulations, your team made the final 6. Can you be ready for an interview in 10 minutes?"
Whoa.
Yeah. So
At 9:30?
Yep. 9:30 p.m. And we started freaking out. I think they just had more applications and they thought that they had to review. And,
Sure.
Yeah, I will never forget that moment.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was wild. And that too was another huge milestone in validation. I was kind of in that moment where my eyes like got bug-eyed and I thought, what is this idea? Like, this isn't really just a crazy idea anymore that, I think is almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like, this is a potential for a business, and we just won the United States. Like, we beat it. Like, we're in the final 6. We hadn't won at this point, but we were in the final 6, and that in itself was enough for me.
Yeah.
Which is also really cool because Augustana had a team that was in the final 6
That's
too.
what I thought. Yeah.
Yep.
Luca, right?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So just even looking at that, I mean, the teams we were
so
competing
little South Dakota,
right?
2 schools out of 6. That's incredible. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, if one of us wins, I call that a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we didn't hear back who won until the next Monday. So it was about 3 days. It was an antsy 3 days.
Still in Boston, or did you get home?
We got home.
Okay.
Yep. We were quarantining when we got back because, we just had to be safe about that. And nobody knew what was going on at that point.
Yeah.
We were in the eye of the storm in Boston and New York City.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I guess at that point, I guess they rolled out the winner that Monday and it turned out to be us.
And that means what? Tell the audience.
So that means that we qualified. So we were one of the top 30 teams in the world. There were 300,000 original applications, and we made it to the final 30.
So that's globally.
Yes.
Yeah. And also a $100,000 prize.
So at that point, we hadn't won the $100,000.
Oh, okay.
So what that meant was originally the plan was you go compete for the money in London. It's a 5-week program in London. You stay at this asterisk castle with all the other teams. And that got nixed because of COVID. But instead we had a 12-week long accelerator program, all virtual, but very, very, very helpful.
And was that in the summer or the
fall? It started June, and we worked all the way through December. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would basically, I felt like it was an online MBA.
Yeah.
Like we would get coached, we would listen to these classes and talks that the Hult Prize put on. And then every Friday we had to pitch. So we'd get ranked top 3 and bottom 3 of the 30 teams that were there.
Great practice.
It was phenomenal practice.
So by this point, you're like, shit, I have to make this company.
Right. And each week you get ranked on, okay, are you growing this company? So you're not only competing and trying to articulate your business and prepare for these pitches, but you're also trying to grow. We're students and we're college athletes. Like, it was an interesting,
busy.
It was busy, but it's also exciting.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah.
And so let's see, this is summer 20.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in April of 21.
Yes.
You're a junior and a college athlete. You're also in the symphony, I believe. I'm guessing you probably get good grades too. You go to the library.
What we do at the library, though, I mean,
give us the update then. So Fomeno is where right now?
So in February, we had to submit a seed capital proposal.
Yeah.
And originally the grand prize is $1 million, but that's when you're competing and pitching in person. And, the CEO of Hult Prize, his name is Ahmad Ashkar, he was very adamant about not having a team win $1 million over Zoom pitching. He was just like, that just doesn't, there's something about that's not right. So instead, he cut up the prize to be 10 $100,000 applications or prizes. And so essentially every team submitted
might be a better approach anyway for sort of growing entrepreneurship and enterprise. Yeah.
Which to us, I think was a huge advantage. Because I mean, at this point, you're competing against these phenomenal teams. Like it's kind of the luck of the draw. What judges like your idea best?
Yeah, personal preference. Right. Yeah, pretty subjective.
And it's a one or nothing. Like either you win the $1 million or you get no seed investment. Yeah. So for us,
which is a lot of time.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was really excited to hear that it turned to the $100,000 grand prize for 10 teams. So our chances went from 1 in 30 to 1 in 3. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty excited about it. But it's
still incredibly competitive.
Right.
Yeah.
But so we ended up winning that a couple weeks ago one of the seed investments.
Cool.
So that's kind of where we're at now. And it's just...
So the three of you, when you get that phone call, email, whatever it was, what's going through your head?
I don't know. I think it took me about 3 or 4 weeks to actually have it set in. I still don't think I really know what's going on, to be honest.
Was there ever a point when you were like, this is just a sort of a project, like it's not really going to become a business? Like now you feel like this is a business that
I think it kind of started in the fall while we're going through this accelerator program. And there are these amazing business people who participate in the Hult Prize for mentoring and things like that, who are telling you, like we said over and over again, like just believing in this concept, believing in you as a young entrepreneur, like that's huge. Mm-hmm. And I think it was slowly then when even some of them were telling me like, Brigit, maybe you should drop out of school. Like,
sure.
What about this? Like, I mean, if you really are taking this seriously, like you don't have enough time. Like maybe you should quit track. Maybe you should do these different things in order to really focus on Fomeno. And that's when I kind of decided like, okay, can I amp up my course, credits in order to get out of here early?
Yep.
Like I love college. It's a great experience. I'm so grateful for this Hult community, but if I want to do this, like people are telling me that I should do it. I should go all in.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of when it started to click. Like this is not just an idea. It's not just a school project. It's not just a competition. Like this is a potential company that could really be impactful.
Yeah. Good for you. That's awesome. And so you'll graduate at the end of the summer, this upcoming summer. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about co-founders. So you explained sort of the origin story, your friend who heard the initial idea, the designer, and then sort of this additional person. It's kind of like going to college and like, meeting a couple of people and starting a band, and then like someone's we're going to go tour, like let's drop out. And maybe the other person's like, I don't know what my parents will say about that, so where are you guys, like, how do you feel about that? Like choosing a co-founder is like choosing, I mean, you don't get to choose your siblings, but you do kind of get to choose your co-founders. So those are big decisions. How do you work through that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Even with the Hult Prize, they pick teams primarily on the team. Like you can have like a decent idea, but if you have a really good team, like you are destined for success.
Sure.
I mean, I am so grateful.
You'll just change the idea if you have to.
Pivot. It's that simple. And I'm so grateful for our team. I think we all just get along really well. Everyone on our team is very hardworking. We've learned tasks that we didn't originally know how to do just to fill roles. We're very supportive of each other. It's just, it works out really well. And it makes me just very grateful and understand the importance of a good team. Because if you don't have a good team, it's too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like those group projects in college where someone's not carrying their weight. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm very grateful for Peyton and Ashlyn because they're phenomenal. And we all have different strengths, which is also very important. And Peyton's communications, Ashlyn's design. It all works out really, really well.
Cool. So as the CEO, unpack like 6 months from now, the vision, are you guys going to start building the app? Do you have to, I'm sure you've heard this already, but you have like one of the hardest businesses, which is like a double-sided market, right? Mm-hmm. You need to build out the supply of the inventory as well as the buyers.
Yes.
So like, what's it look like in 6 months at the end of the 21, we'll say?
Yeah. So we're preparing to launch this summer.
Okay.
So the app is actually on my phone. It's in beta.
Cool.
But we're just integrating with all of these online thrift shops right now in order to get their data in. And it's really exciting. Like I said, originally going to this, I had no idea like how to build a tech company. But I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've asked, and we have so many tech advisors at this point. Any person that knows something about tech, I'm like, hey, can I have a meeting with you? So that's been really fun. And also it's something that I've learned I'm really passionate about. Like I always say, if Fomeno fails, like I want to go into tech. Like I think in 10 years, every company is going to be a tech company.
Agreed.
So, it's exciting. And I think all of us throughout the Hult Prize project have learned to really buy into this. Like Ashlyn graduated last semester, so she's constantly putting together design stuff. Like she's ready to do this full time.
Yep.
She and I actually just applied for an incubator in Washington, D.C. next year. So it's very competitive. We'll kind of see what happens. But we're putting ourselves out there just to do this full time.
Good.
And then Peyton has 1 year left of school, but she is the best multitasker of anyone I've ever met. So she learns to do it all at the same time.
Wow. So a lot of work to do.
Yes,
I got
lots of work
a
to
lot
do.
of roadmap and work ahead, but you got a good track record. So I was excited to have you on because you're such a great example of what this show stands for, is that leaders come in all shapes and sizes. And even your point about like where the world is going with tech companies, like I agree with that so wholeheartedly. And someone listening might be like, I don't know about that. But like from your point of view as a young professional, you see the world and see where it's headed. And so I absolutely think you're, a great leader. So what have you learned, through the mentorship, through the last 12 months with the Hult competition? How have you grown as an individual, as a CEO? Talk about that.
I've grown tremendously. And I think a lot of it's from failure, to be honest with you. I think anybody who's in the startup community, and I'm starting to realize it's almost anybody in general, but we are all juggling so many different roles. And I've learned that it's okay to not be on your A game 100% of the time. So there's a professional runner named Alexia Pappas, and she was training for the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And it was right before the Olympic trials, and she had this horrible workout, just terrible. She goes up to her coach, who's also a prior Olympian, and she says, I'm not ready for this. I can't do this. This workout just went like horribly. I'm going to just look like an idiot out there. Mm-hmm. And her coach just kind of laughs at her. He's like, Alexia, there's this thing called the rule of thirds that you must understand, okay? So he goes, a third of the time, you're going to be rocking it. You're going to be doing so good. You're going to feel unstoppable. Like life is going to be good. You're going to feel like prepared and on it. A third of the time, things are going to be going well, like pretty good. Not the best, but definitely passable.
Yeah.
And then a third of the time, things are going to be pretty bad. Like you are not going to be prepared. Like it's going to be horrible, and you're going to be pretty disappointed in yourself and feel like the world is ending. But as long as everything's in those proportions, like a third, like you are going out there and trying to reach your greatest potential as an individual. Like we cannot be on our A game 100% of the time. And if we are, we're probably not pushing ourselves hard enough.
Yeah. And
so I don't know. I kind of hold on to that a lot. Because I feel like with school and with running and with this business, like things are not perfect all the time.
Yep.
And especially in the entrepreneurial community, I think we can be pretty hard on ourselves. You know, when you get rejected from an investment or a pitch goes pretty bad and you get, a lot of constructive feedback, more so than you want.
Yep.
It's really easy to be hard on ourselves. But so I tell myself that mantra almost every day.
Nice. And how do you... Clearly you're passionate about the idea, right? I mean, it started with just this kind of little story.
Yeah.
But now you want to, I think, entrepreneurs will almost bend the world to the future that they see.
Yeah.
And you want this to exist for lots of reasons. So speak to like when someone says, yeah, I don't think that's the right investment for me, or like, you guys aren't actually going to make this app, or like, you're too young, you're still, whatever it is. How do you get back up and keep working?
I think it comes down to, like you kind of mentioned, the mission. Like we are here to create a mission-driven impact company. And I am so fully bought into that idea that even if someone says that, oh, that's a crazy idea. Like I get that all the time. Like,
sure.
What? We don't.
Yeah.
Especially being in South Dakota. I mean, it's like, sometimes people just don't quite understand yet. But I have a great team and we believe in this idea. And we have advisors who fully believe in this idea. Maybe they didn't at first, but they do now. And I think it's just going back to them to get filled up too. You know, if you get shot down in something, you need to be able to go somewhere and just let it out and have people fill you. And so I think our team is really big about if you see greatness in each other, or honestly anyone in general, you should speak it. I think that's what good leaders do. They are honestly there to fill other people up and make them believe in themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we get rejected a lot from different things, and you just go back to the team and be like, guys, I need you to tell me that this is going to work out.
Yep.
And they do that.
I love that. That's great. Speak to, I forget, what's your major?
I'm sustainability major.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. So clearly you know your stuff in this space. So speak to what you hope, like the impact Fomeno can, why this is so important, like why specifically clothing as an aspect of sustainability.
So the fashion industry is the second dirtiest industry in the world, right after oil. It takes so many resources to produce clothing. There's this concept of fast fashion. going around. So basically companies are trying to produce clothes at mass scale as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible. But a lot of workers, from just an ethical human-to-human point of view, are being exploited because of this. Chemicals that are just absolutely toxic end up in water supplies, CO2 pollution. There's just a lot of unethical things
Waste.
that go in. Yes, so much waste. The average American throws out 75 pounds of clothing each year.
Whoa. Pounds.
Yeah, pounds. So, and these clothes are good clothes. Like, the whole idea of Fomeno is to take clothes that you don't want anymore and connect them with someone who does want them. So the whole idea of the circular economy is not just in fashion, but it's becoming incorporated into almost every industry now. Like, let's take things that already exist and either revamp them or just find them a new home. And it's critical.
Maybe I missed that then. Is there a revenue aspect then on the seller side? Like, if I want to get rid of some of my clothes, or no?
So like Poshmark and ThredUp, like if you were like, oh, I have all these clothes, I don't want them anymore, you could make a Poshmark account and just sell them on there.
Okay.
We don't do that directly with us, but we would ideally like to partner with Poshmark.
So you're supplying on the buying side.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And speak to maybe what, climate change and just recently in the news, President Biden, some initiatives around, CO2 emissions and where he wants, like, how does clothing play a piece in this whole ecosystem in this puzzle?
Right. So I think that everything is kind of connected in regards to waste and CO2 emissions. So even like the factories that put off CO2 emissions, all of it plays a role. But also like shipping and things like that. Like, the amount of clothes we ship over is ridiculous. I mean, there used to be 2 to 4 seasons per year of styles. So a store would put out, stuff like that. Now there's 52. So
every week.
Right. As a consumer, we like to go into stores and see new things. That didn't used to always be the case.
Sure.
So because of that, it increases the supply and the demand. And I mean, we're asking for it. So in order to do that, they need to make things cheaply, and all of that production increases CO2 emissions and things like that. But yeah, a lot of it too is just that chemical and waste component of it.
Fantastic. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Speak to, for other people who might be like in your phase of life thinking like, oh, I have an idea, or like, maybe I want to be an entrepreneur, right? Like, I'm guessing 2 years ago, or on that trip, on that hike, you weren't planning on being an entrepreneur.
No.
Now you are, and a pretty exciting opportunity ahead of you. So what would you say to somebody listening who's like, I don't think I'm an entrepreneur, I don't think I'm a leader?
Yeah. I've been there. I still am there on some days. I think, oh man, I'm out of my element. Like, I'm not ready for this. I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, struggle with that.
All the time.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah.
We don't know what we're doing.
Imposter syndrome.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But I think I'd like to say, oh, just believe in yourself and go for it. And I think that's important. But sometimes that's easier said than done. So I think the best thing that you could do, this is just from my personal experience, is to surround yourself with people who believe in you.
Cool.
And sometimes in order to do that, you need to be the person who believes in others.
I like that. Yeah. Well, we were talking before, our beginning stories are a little bit different, but my entrepreneurial story started with a grant as well, and much smaller than $100,000, but somebody saying like, hey, go for it and jump, right? And at that age especially, that was way more valuable than the money.
Absolutely.
This idea of someone said, yeah, I think you could do this. And I think you're 100% right that like, that's sort of like a karma thing, right? We need to put it out there and give it to others.
Right.
So that it comes back and that we're all encouraging.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge part of leadership. So, I mean, right now you have, because you guys don't have a team outside of the co-founders yet, right?
We have like an app development team, and then we have a team member she's originally from Rapid City, but she goes to school at Colorado State. Her name's Annie Lean. So she heads a lot of her title is the head style curator. Okay. So she partners with fashion influencers, so more of that marketing component. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you have so you're actively raising money, or you're going to be, or?
Yes. I mean, part of the money with the $100,000 from the Hult Prize is to get an initial MVP out there, start generating revenue, and then also just to put ourselves in a position to get further investment.
Yeah, cool. So I guess I'll push you even further than like a year from now. I'm sure everyone's asked, when you raise, what are you going to use the money for? Like, what's the company look like?
Yeah. I think it's mostly just increasing the technology of the app. Like we say, we're offering the simplest thrifting experience yet. I think that, each update can make it simpler.
Yeah.
So yeah, and technology is expensive.
Yep.
To make it run perfectly like you like it to. So that's huge. Obviously, marketing, things like that cost a pretty penny. So I think marketing and increasing technology are the main sources.
Cool. One piece of advice would be in your, you're clearly like a digital native. I know that term gets thrown around a lot for people your generation, but one thing I wish if I could go back and do over, I think so much of the process, like the stories you're telling right now, the story in Boston, fantastic story, like is also the marketing, right? Like this idea of building in public, you'll see sometimes online or on Twitter, everything you just talked about, telling that story as the CEO, like as you're going through it, the ups and the downs, people really will buy into you, to your company, to the story. They'll want you to see you succeed, right? And as I know you've already experienced in the past year, then that becomes an email intro to an investor, to someone who's a CTO, to some fashion person, like that would be my tip.
Yeah. Even you allowing me to be on the show, I mean, it helps tremendously.
Yeah. Well, and you got the story down. So, let's move into actually one quick one. And I sometimes hesitate to ask this because for 10 years now, I've always had, like, every time I give a talk, people ask, why Lemonly? Where's the name come from? And the story is just actually not that sexy. Like I say, like there's the real story, which is basically like the domain was available and you could say it and spell it. Right. You have the tough part of maybe not always saying it and spelling it. So I'm guessing there is at least a meaning to it. Yes. What's the name? Okay. So the name, that original Forget Me Not t-shirt, originally we called the company Forget Me Not. Like don't forget about these clothes. Yeah. It had a particular meaning, but like you said, web domain, things like that, trademarking purposes, also catering to more of a female audience with the word Forget Me Not. Sure. We took the first two letters of each word and Forget Me and Not and put them together, and it's Fomeno. Got it. Cool. I'm sure, you have to correct people, like even before I know, before we're trying to figure out ways that, like Uber, like they put the little, pronunciation under it. Like, we'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Cool. Well, let's do a little rapid fire for you, Brigit. What are you a big reader? You probably don't have any time to read. I know in college I always had to read the stuff you're told to read. What's a book you recommend to folks? One of my favorite books is called Grit by Angela Duckworth. I love that book. I can see that. Yep, it's a good one. And I don't know if you ever have time to unplug, but your entrepreneurial story almost perfectly coincides with COVID. Over the last year, when you do need a break from all the stresses and the balls in life that you're juggling, how do you do that? I guess one of the things, I think people think like, oh, track, that's a huge demand on you, and at times it is, but running for me is a way, like a release. If I thought of it as being like another full-time job, I think I would crumble under the pressure. Sure. But for me, that's a way for me to decompress. Cool. Well, track is so like individual. I mean, there's team, but there's also the individual aspect, which is great. Yep. Cool. So this is a question we ask when we hire at Lemonly. What do you think your superpower is? So the one thing you do better than anyone else. Ooh. And it's hard because you got to brag. Yeah. Ooh. I like to think, sometimes I think this is a disadvantage, seeing the best in people, but I love pulling out my favorite things about people, like initially upon meeting them. Like even when I met you, right when you opened the door, it was just like so inviting. And like this this place that you've created for your employees to work is just so inviting. Like you're just a very inviting individual, which I think is really cool. So yeah, I don't know. I like to speak it too. So. Sure. Well, that is impressive because I just met you like 45 minutes ago. So yeah, I know. Impressive. So I guess I don't know if that's a superpower, but I think as a leader and a manager, CEO, whatever your role evolves into, like that goes a long way, right? Like kind of meeting people where they're at and lifting them up and encouraging them, being honest. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So speaking of that, who are the leaders who have sort of shaped your life, whether you know them or you've studied them? Who are the people you look up to? Kind of
circling back to what I mentioned before, just like surrounding yourself with good leaders. I am so grateful for my parents. I think the family is a huge foundation if we want to, do big things in this world. It's like start with where you're at, which is the family. So my parents are phenomenal. So are my siblings. But also like the coaches that I've had, my high school track coach, his name is Roy Swartzer. He was one of the biggest proponents for believing in me at a young age. Cool. So I'm a Division I athlete completely because of him. Like he told me to go for it, even when I probably, on paper I wasn't ready to do it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, those are some pretty big leaders.
And I'm sure you've met some just in the last year or two in terms of getting to where you guys are today.
Yeah, there's so many. My co-founders, like even, they're phenomenal too. There's so many. I'm so grateful for the people who are around me. I feel like every person I meet in some unique way, I'm like, wow, like you are so good at that. Like you lead others so well in this like small avenue. So
yeah, I think one thing was we learned from the show, and I've felt as an entrepreneur and a CEO is like, we often, the CEO, I feel like, there's a lot of burdens and weight to bear, but you get an outside, like a kind of outsized recognition that you sometimes don't feel like you always deserve, right? And so like, there's so many other people, not just in the organization who have the same email as you, but outside of the organization, vendors, your accountant, your lawyer, like all these people that make it possible.
Absolutely.
And like deflecting praise, I feel like is such a huge part of my job. Like, no, it wasn't me. Like that was this person.
Absolutely. I agree.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't always ask this question, but I'm curious, like if someone's listening and becomes inspired by your story, which is a phenomenal story, like how can we help you? Like what's next?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very grateful. I think we are where we are today. I don't think I know. We are where we are today because of people like you who say, how can I help you?
Yeah.
You're a young entrepreneur. I want to help.
Yeah.
I think if you have, we're young, we're students. I'm 21. There's so many things about building a company that I don't know. And I'm always so excited to meet someone who will be like, oh, I'll teach you how to do this or that. Sure. If you're talented at like something in the business world, whether it be financing or tech, I am always looking for more people who are experienced in tech or integration or something like that who will just even have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're looking to expand our tech team too. So if anybody out there is listening, seriously, just email me.
Cool.
And I'd love to set up a chat. But yes, that and
so I guess that's probably the follow-up is how someone can get a hold of you, your website or?
Yep, website, which is thriftfomeno.com. Our email is on there, LinkedIn at Brigit Blote.
Okay.
Literally any avenue. Just, look up my name and shoot me an email.
Well, I feel, Brigit, like you're maybe like a year from now, you'll have to come back and like give us the update because I imagine it's moving fast. It feels like a high-speed train that's just probably a runaway train in a good way. So we'll have you come back and give us the update.
Well, thank you. I look forward to it.
Well, good luck to you and thanks again for the time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. That was episode 47 with Brigit. Thank you, Brigit, for coming on. Like I said, we'll bring you back in the future because I think your story has many more chapters to write and I'm excited to follow along. So reach out to Brigit if you feel like you can help her in any way. Those early days, entrepreneurs always need help, but I definitely remember those early days and all those people she cited that have helped as a CEO, as a founder. You don't forget that. You definitely remember those people, and so you got to always thank them. But thanks, Brigit. Remember, we drop new episodes of the Leadmore podcast every Thursday, and you should subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever. Subscribe, give us a 5-star rating. Thanks for listening. Take care, and be well.